formal agenda, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge a noteworthy honor. Congratulations are in order to the staff and management of Tulloch Engineering. Tulloch was recognized as the 2016 Company of the Year at the Northern Ontario Business Awards held this past week in Sudbury. Since being founded more than 25 years ago, Tulloch has grown from a small consultancy to a large engineering firm with 10 offices around the province and over 275 staff. Tulloch was first established in our area and today continues to have a substantial presence in Sault Ste. Marie. The company is a true Northern Ontario success story, and I'd like to extend our congratulations to the firm for being recognized by Northern Ontario business and also to wish them much more growth and success in the years ahead. I'd also like to acknowledge and recognize Tom Vare, who is here with us tonight for the first time. I'll just let council know, I think you're all aware this is his first day of work, so if we could take it easy on him, I'm sure that would be appreciated. But Tom, we welcome you to your new role and we look forward to working with you. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, if you could start the meeting, please.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, under agenda item 1, adoption of minutes, a motion by councillors Turco and Shoemaker. Resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of 2016-09-26 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 3, declarations of pecuniary interest.
We have, I figured there must have been one. Councillor Shoemaker?
It's the planning item. I can't get my agenda, but it's whatever the planning item is because the proponent is
sure.
applying to the law firm.
On the planning agenda, you have a declaration because the applicant is a client of your law firm. That's noted.
So noted. Under agenda item 4, approve agenda as presented, a motion by councillors Nero and Hupinen. Resolve that the agenda and addendum for the 2016-10-11 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 5, proclamations and delegations. 5.1, United Way. Kathleen McFadden, 2016 campaign chair, is in attendance.
Welcome to council, Kathleen.
Thank you very much. Your Worship, members of council and administration, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to celebrate our United Way campaign. I'm honored to have been asked to act as the chair of the 2016 campaign and excited about the changes that the Sault Ste. Marie and District United Way is implementing. Poverty is a reality for many in our community, and it appears that the problem is growing. For the past couple of years, the United Way's campaign target has been to help 12,000 people. Now we know that more than 15,000 people in Sault Ste. Marie and District live in poverty. That's 1 out of every 8 people. There are neighborhoods in this city where nearly 60% of people have incomes that are below the poverty level. The statistics are stunning. For 59 years, the Sault Ste. Marie and District United Way has been bringing individuals and community partners together to improve lives and make the greatest possible impact in the community. And now, the United Way is taking bold action and beginning a 5-year process to address the root causes of poverty. The United Way's new framework has been 4 years in the making. It supports the work of the Community Poverty Roundtable and is aligned with the Sault Ste. Marie Poverty Reduction Strategic Action Plan that was developed with input from the City of Sault Ste. Marie, the DSAB, agency CAOs, and was endorsed here in August. The vision of the Community Poverty Roundtable is to reduce the impact of low income on the health and well-being of individuals and families in our community. After looking at what other community organizations were already doing as part of the community plan, the United Way decided to focus efforts on 2 priority areas: essential services and workforce entry. Essential services deal with immediate needs, such as information about how to assess support services, referrals, and emergency financial assistance to avoid homelessness. Workforce entry focuses on ensuring awareness of programs for workers and employers, along with access to supports needed to successfully complete an appropriate level of education. This new approach will build on current successes. Donations will continue to support the Community Housing Support Workers, 211 Information Referral Database, Northern Ontario Travel Grants, Community Assistance Trust, bursaries for Sault College students, and the Options Navigator, which provides one-to-one support to address barriers to education and employment. The United Way will continue to work with and support a variety of community partners to achieve the outcomes that have been identified in the plan. And because achieving real change takes time, the United Way Strategic Action Plan has a 5-year time frame and a corresponding multi-year fundraising goal of $6,250,000. Agencies have been invited to bring forward their expertise and apply for funding for activities that support the essential service and workforce entry outcomes. And it's anticipated that many who received support in the past will continue to work with the United Way. We all want to make a real difference. It's a good feeling when you contribute to a worthwhile cause and to know your donation is being used in a thoughtful manner. You know that donating to the United Way has been a wise investment for 59 years. Thank you for helping to spread the message that now, more than ever, it's an opportunity to address the root causes of poverty and to make a lasting change. It's a chance to build a stronger community and to truly move from poverty to possibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership and dedication to the campaign this year, Kathleen. I have a proclamation. The City of Sault Ste. Marie desires that all of its citizens enjoy a high quality of life. And whereas the provision of health and social services necessary to achieve a desired quality of life requires a cooperative effort between public and private providers of these services. And whereas for 59 years, United Way Sault Ste. Marie District has engaged individuals and mobilized collective action to improve lives, making the greatest possible impact in our community. And whereas United Way of Sault Ste. Marie District is taking bold action against poverty, beginning a 5-year process to address root causes of poverty by working with multiple community partners on strategies which will reduce the impact of low income on the health and well-being of individuals. And whereas it is vital that the United Way continue to be successful for the benefit of all in our community. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, by virtue of the power vested in me as the Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do declare community support for the City's United Way 5-year campaign. I urge all citizens in the community to participate in the United Way campaign by supporting these efforts. Together, we are a possibility. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Under Agenda Item 5.2, Small Business Week, Angela Bruni, Economic Development Officer with our EDC, is in attendance. Welcome to Council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to City Council. On behalf of the Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today regarding small business and our community. As many people in our community are aware of, small businesses, those with fewer than 100 employees, are key components in the Canadian economic engine, typically representing 98% of all businesses and employing more than 70% of all total private labor force. The Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation has, since 2001, delivered a breadth of local programs and services supporting the development, growth, and sustainability of all businesses. As part of these programs and services, over the last 15 years, the EDC has delivered training and information events throughout the Algoma District, targeting small and micro startups, existing businesses, and young entrepreneur opportunities. The most recent example of these are the 25 Summer Company participants and 13 Summer Starter Company grant recipients. With our new incubation service, Millworks Centre for Entrepreneurship, we have been able to create a positive buzz about entrepreneurship and provide support for those looking to start a business. With this in mind, the EDC, through the new Millworks Centre for Entrepreneurship, has partnered with the Business Development Bank of Canada, the Community Development Corporation of Sault Ste. Marie, the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, Startup Sioux, the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Centre, and TD Canada Trust to deliver the Bridges to Better Business event on October 19th, which will be our 12th annual event. Bridges to Better Business is a showcase of local entrepreneurs as well as important keynote speakers whose roles are to inspire, enhance, educate, and enlighten our local small business sector, whether they are new startups, seasoned business owners, or aspiring young entrepreneurs. Our speaker this year, Dr. Sean Weiss, a current professor of entrepreneurship and former Dragon Den advisor, will speak to lessons from Canada's business leaders, such as Kevin O'Leary. In this multimedia, interactive, and engaging keynote speaker, Dr. Wise illustrates the lessons all organizations can learn from these icons of the economy, these entrepreneurial champions, these masters of innovation. Also included will be our panel of local entrepreneurs who will share their stories, trials, tribulations, and in the hopes of providing inspiration to those facing similar issues. Bridges to Better Business is held annually during the BDC's Small Business Week, and this year we would like to ask City Council to help us and our partners grow awareness, inspiration, and enthusiasm for not only the event and not only Small Business Week, but for entrepreneurship and small business growth in our community by declaring the week of October 16th to the 22nd as Small Business Week in Sault Ste. Marie. We hope our community leaders can participate in our Bridges event, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burney. Whereas small business is the backbone of the Canadian economy, consisting of 1.17 million total businesses, or 97.9% of all businesses, employing more than 8.2 million Canadians, or 70.5% of the total workforce, contributing an average of 30% to the provincial GDP. And whereas, in addition, small and medium-sized enterprises are a key element of the local economic and social fabric of Sault Ste. Marie, and whereas the Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation, along with its community partners at the Business Development Bank of Canada, the Community Development Corporation of Sault Ste. Marie, the Chamber of Commerce, Startup Sioux, and the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Centre work collaboratively to deliver a strong slate of small business supports and programs, specifically during the BDC Small Business Week from October 16th through October 22nd, 2016. And whereas the ongoing health and well-being of local small and medium enterprises is paramount to the continued strength and growth of our local economy, now therefore I, Christian Provenzano, by virtue of the power vested in me as the Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the week of October 16th to 22nd as Small Business Week and support the activities contained therein to support and grow small business in Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under Agenda Item 5.3, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day, Melissa Fresh and Miranda Moffat are in attendance.
Welcome to Council, Ms. Moffat, Ms. Fresh.
Thank you for having us here today. On average, the City of Sault Ste. Marie has been welcoming 915 newborn babies each and every year. Our community is a great place to raise a family with the pure beauty of the surrounding landscape and the kind and loving people that choose to live here. However, sometimes the joy of welcoming a new baby into the world turns into a great tragedy. We experience between 20 and 30 infant deaths, which includes, but is not limited to, miscarriage, stillbirth, sudden infant death syndrome, or the death of a newborn per year as a community. The pain of losing a child is unimaginable.
In hopes of helping fellow families who have gone through such tragedy, we are hosting the first Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness and Remembrance event in Sault Ste. Marie. It will take place outside the Art Gallery of Algoma on Saturday, October 15th at 6:30 p.m. This is a day that is becoming globally recognized to remember those babies who have gone too soon. Locally, there are limited resources for families going through a loss, and it is the hopes that this event can start the conversation as well as bring together individuals, families, and organizations to help ease some of the pain and also offer a time to remember our babies without judgment. The event is open to everyone and will include personal stories, a candlelight vigil at 7 p.m. as part of a global Wave of Light ceremony, local agency representation, refreshments, and a flower petal release. Thank you.
Thank you. Whereas pregnancy and infant loss is a tragedy that affects 1 in 4 women in Ontario as well as their partners and their families. And whereas the silence that surrounds these losses impedes healing for those that are affected. And whereas awareness and sharing about these losses, especially within one's own community, helps healing to take place. And whereas a day of remembrance honors the lives of the children and supports grieving parents, families, and friends whose lives are forever altered by the heartbreak of losing a child. And whereas the 15th day of October is recognized in parts of Canada and in many other jurisdictions around the world as a day of remembrance and awareness of pregnancy and infant losses. Now therefore I, Christian Provenzano, by virtue of the power vested in me as the Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim October 15th, 2016 as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day. Thank you.
Under Agenda Item 5.4, Waste Reduction Week. Karina Barrett, Environmental Initiatives Coordinator, is in attendance.
Welcome to Council.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and fellow city staff. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today about Waste Reduction Week for 2016. As the Environmental Initiatives Coordinator for the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and as someone who feels strongly about environmental issues, I am here tonight to ask for Council's endorsement of Waste Reduction Week. I believe it is important for the City to officially recognize that the generation of waste can be detrimental to our environment. By endorsing Waste Reduction Week, the City will encourage our citizens to reduce the waste produced in their homes and workplaces on a daily basis. Canadians produce more than 31 million tons of waste annually, and of that, less than 25% is diverted to recycling facilities. Instead of being recycled, this waste is buried in landfills where it is shielded from the adequate air and water required for healthy decomposition. Sault Ste. Marie's own landfill receives approximately 55,000 tons of waste every year. About 21,000 tons of this waste is collected curbside from residents or dropped off at the landfill by the public. Every landfill has a limited lifespan, and reducing the waste entering our landfill at the source will help prolong its life and mitigate adverse environmental effects. The city's waste diversion rate is currently over 35%, through the curbside recycling programs, electronics recycling, a household hazardous waste depot, and leaf and yard waste collection. Each day of Waste Reduction Week, I'll be sending out an educational email to city staff. Staff is also encouraged to bring their unwanted electronics to a temporary drop-off location here in the lobby of the Civic Center for the week. The City of Sault Ste. Marie is leading by example with its participation in Waste Reduction Week and appreciates City Council's support in this important initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Whereas the generation of solid waste and the needless waste of water and energy resources are recognized as global environmental problems, and whereas municipal and provincial governments have an important role to play in promoting waste reduction, reuse, recycling, composting, and other conservation measures, and whereas communities, businesses, and organizations across Canada have committed to working together to raise awareness of these issues during Waste Reduction Week in Canada. And whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie is dedicated to taking the lead in our community by reducing our waste, conserving resources, and educating staff in the community about environmental sustainability. Now therefore I, Christian Provenzano, by virtue of the power vested in me as the Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim October 17th to 23rd, 2016 as Waste Reduction Week in the City of Sault Ste. Marie and encourage the public and city staff to reduce their waste to help our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, it'll be some time before we need to deal with the planning application. I would suggest that
Go to consent.
we can move to consent.
Great.
And just a note, Councillor Butland had requested that item 6.12 be separated from consent just so that it could be considered at the same time his motion under item 8 is considered.
Okay, great. So 6.12 will be separated. So we'll start with Councillor Myers and the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 6.3, the Infrastructure Task Force.
Sure. Very good.
Just wanting to know, and I should know this, I suppose, and I will confess I don't, who is the coordinator that's hired on a fee-for-service, and what budget do those funds come from? Does that still need to be someone outside our organization?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Myers. The person in question is Dave Murphy, who has reported to you in the past.
Thank you.
It's on a fee-for-service basis. At the moment, this committee is funded by a single source of funds. It doesn't have an operating budget per se.
Okay.
It was money that had been set aside quite some time ago to deal with the Huron Central project between
Right.
here and Sudbury, and it was surplus funds to that.
That was EDF funding, was it not, initially, for the Huron Central piece?
I don't recall
Okay.
exactly.
Point being, there's no impact on our levy. It's already money set aside.
That's correct.
When we're internalizing, we're sort of disbanding the actual external piece of the committee, and we're bringing it in as a task committee. Is it just a name change, or is there something a little bit more to this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Myers, this committee has gone through several iterations for the last 12 to 14 years. It started out as merely an advisory committee to the mayor of the day. In its present iteration, as the revised terms of reference indicate, it's really become more of a technical working group, and as such isn't really a public committee per se, but more offering more technical advice that can be reported through council through the CAO.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Again, I know I should have known. I couldn't think that it was Dave at the time, so thank you.
Any other matters? Anybody else on 6.3? Any other matters, Councillor Myers?
6.4, the Community Heritage Ontario Conference. Just want to make the point that this is really an excellent opportunity, and when the Conference and Events Fund was established a number of years ago, this was exactly what the goal of setting aside that $20,000 annually was for. The fund was created for Sault Ste. Marie to be able to go out and bring conferences here that tied into what we do as a municipality, giving us an opportunity like this one would do to strut our stuff within our, in this case, it's the heritage, and at the same time have more people locally benefit from the educational portion of a conference like this. So just very, very pleased to see it, and obviously I hope we'll support the application to the fund that was set up for this very purpose. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else on that matter? Councillor Myers, at the extent of your matters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hoopanen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6.2, surplus policy.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Let's just get there. Staff is recommending that a surplus policy not be put in place until such time as the results of the CCAA are known. And I agree with that. I think that's a good recommendation. I just have a question about the surplus accounts. Do we have a surplus account for each and every department? Or is there one large surplus account that we sort of draw from? And how does money get put into the contingency fund? And is there just one contingency fund?
We'll direct those questions to Ms. Schell.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hoopanen. Each department does not have their own surplus account. It's a corporate surplus that we figure out at the end of each year, and it's all the departments together that, whether they have positive or negatives, it's a net result of all of those. As for the contingency fund, there's no direct funding for that. It would usually be a recommendation from staff to put money into that fund to allow it to grow to cover future contingencies. There's also amounts that we include in our budget that go to the contingency reserve if we foresee an issue that may come up in the next year.
Okay, that sounds great. That answers my question. Thank you.
On the same, anybody else in the same matter? Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation on that surplus policy is that we sort of not develop one now and develop it at a time that we're out of CCAA. Was there any consideration given to just developing it now and holding it in abeyance until we're out of CCAA?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, due to the current economic conditions in the city, I would recommend that it wouldn't be financially prudent to direct resources in the short term to anything other than the contingency reserve. So the recommendation of this report is basically a short-term surplus policy. We will be developing a longer-term one once everything is stabilized a bit in the community.
Thank you. And will the longer-term policy reflect the previous resolution of council, the direction that was given in that resolution?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, that is the intention of the long-term policy. We will be looking at the direction that Council provided and whether or not those items can be addressed through a surplus policy.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on the surplus policy? Councillor Turco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Ms. Schall, and a question about your report about surplus, which I think Councillor Bundy referred to it as the people's money a couple of meetings ago. You talk about the reserves and surplus, and you make some comments there about the staff projecting a potential deficit of the year for this year. How do you base that information on? That we might have a deficit this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco, if you recall on August 27th Council agenda, there was a report from the finance staff which gave you the second quarter financial results where we were projecting a potential $2 million deficit due to WSIB presumptive cancer claims that were not anticipated to be of that size.
Thank you. And the follow-up question, the contingency reserve, would that mean that we can only use it for some particular situation, or can we use it to bring down the levy as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco, again, staff has provided a reserve policy to Council which sets out the purpose and the requirements for each type of reserve, how the money can be used, as well as how the fund will be replenished or supported through the years. The contingency reserve is set out to be specific for assessment and various other contingencies that were unforeseen. Its purpose was not to be used for levy reduction.
So, Mr. Mayor, just another quick follow-up. So, can we use it? Yes or no? Can we use it to bring down the levy?
For the reserve policy, no.
No, for the contingency reserve.
No.
This new policy this whole policy we're going to come up with apparently.
The contingency reserve per the financial reserve, or per the reserve policy, does not allow it to be used for levy reduction.
So going further, you opened up a lot of questions, Ms. Shah, I'm sorry, for me. Going further, are we then pretty well, with this policy, will we be pretty well close to any application to the levy?
To use reserves is not recommended to reduce the levy, and right now the only reserve we had was the tax stabilization reserve, which was allocated for the specific purpose of levy reduction and stabilizing the levy, and that was used in its entirety in the 2016 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It wasn't a yes or no, but we'll have to accept it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else on 6.2? Seeing none, Councillor Hoopen, do you have any other matters?
I do, actually. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
6.8, the OCIF.
Okay.
I was trying to understand this through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Elliott, and I'm having a bit of difficulty understanding it. So would you mind trying to explain to me what a formula-based portion is compared to an application-based funding? I'm just not clear.
Mr. Elliott?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hoopen, the OCIF program has those two portions. For the last few years, we've got in the vicinity of $400,000 or so as formula-based. It's based on population and economic factors. And they just essentially give us the grant without the need to apply for the funding. The other component is the application-based funding. For the last 2 years, we got OCIF application-based funding for the 2 phases of second line. We got $2 million each for those projects. The program has changed now so that the formula-based amount is going up significantly. So that's, as I said in the report, that's the good news here. It's going up to $2 million by 2019. And because our 17 and 18 amounts total more than $2 million, we are therefore not eligible to apply for application-based funds. I hope that helps.
A little, thank you very much.
Essentially, they give us a check. We don't have to apply for it. It's a grant.
Okay, so that's why
That's what
there's no
formula-based
application.
funding
It's-
is,
Yeah, okay, that's good. Well, that's great news to see that 1.98. That answers my question then.
Anybody else on that same matter? Councillor Turco, sorry, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just that question through you to Mr. Elliott. If we sign this funding agreement, we essentially eliminate the possibility to make applications for specific projects. Am I correct? Through this fund.
I never thought of that. I don't know why you wouldn't sign this, I suppose.
I thought that was one of the last lines in this agreement, that you're not eligible for application funding if you have the base funding.
No. Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, we're not eligible to apply for funds because the two grants they want to give us in 17 and 18 total in excess of $2 million. Okay. That's the eligibility rule.
Gotcha. Okay.
Our population is so big, our grants are big enough that we're not eligible for application-based funding.
So we're not, I guess, we're not precluding a potential revenue source by accepting the grant?
No, not in my view.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else on that same matter? Seeing none, Councillor Hoopanen, do you have any other matters?
Just one more, please, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor. It's 7.3.1, the rodent abatement program.
Well, that's not on consent.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
So
my apologies. I'm now done. Thank you.
We'll get to that. Councillor
Okay.
Christian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple. The first one is 6.1, physician recruitment. I guess I'll direct this to the CAO. I see that, this recruitment, physician recruitment program has been pretty successful. I recall past presentations, and we were seeing that we were making a real dent in the shortfall of physicians. I see in this report, though, that we're looking at reducing our share to 80,000. My question is the reduction as a result, and it says it's because of past expenses, is it strictly because of the volume of physicians that we have to fill, or is it a different approach that we're using and the types of incentives we're trying to use to get physicians, is my question.
Do you want me to take this?
Okay.
Yeah, no, been on the physician recruitment committee by virtue of the fact that I was the mayor, and Al's only recently joined that committee.
Okay.
Well, I guess you've joined it for a while back now. But the committee was only spending around $200,000 a year. Yeah. And because of the incentives have changed, and the committee wasn't paying incentives to the degree that it used to have to pay incentives. So what was happening was everybody was contributing $100,000, and we had money left over at the end of the year. So there was a discussion about adjusting the budget, and the request by our community partners was it would be adjusted where we would still pay 100 and they would each pay 50, which I indicated I wouldn't recommend to council. So as a result of some discussion back and forth, we settled on the city paying, and now again, it's subject to obviously council's endorsement, but the city paying 80,000 and each of our community partners paying 60,000. And they're there, also it benefits them, but they're also there at our request because we want to make sure that the city has, ample physicians. And I saw it as a 20% savings on our part, so I said I would make that recommendation to council. So we weren't spending the whole 300, Councillor Christian, and it's because of the way incentives have changed, and we're not paying incentives the way that we used to pay incentives.
I'd like to know what types of incentives they look for. Like, what are some of the things these physicians are looking for?
Money.
What do we have to provide them to get them excited about Sault Ste. Marie?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Christian. Rather than go through it today, there is a presentation that's going to be made to Council on November 3rd as part of the outside agencies providing their budget update. They do every year provide, as the Physician Recruitment Committee, regular updates on where the incentives and how they're being utilized and how they're affecting efforts. So I would suggest that that's where the information that you're seeking would be best sought. Here, we were just simply making sure that we were dealing with the operating agreement before the year ended to be able to deal with the 80-60-60 split that's been identified.
Okay.
But certainly it is because of a focusing of the incentives, and there's a lot of work that's done to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our dollar.
Okay. Well, I'll wait with bated breath for that.
They were cash incentives, Councillor Christian.
Yeah.
That's what they were.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. On the same matter, Councillor Fada, go ahead.
I'm just, I'm listening to this conversation, I'm wondering if we're not voting on this maybe before that meeting that's going to be taking place. And for that, I'm trying to understand, what are we paying for? What are we getting for the $80,000? And my question is, why don't we wait till we hear what they're doing before we make a decision that we're going to continue to fund?
Well, I don't know how long we've been doing physician recruitment. Do you, Malcolm, do you have an answer to that question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is we've been doing it since back in 2005 when it was first brought forward. Yeah. There's been regular updates that have been provided to council on the activities that have been undertaken by the committee, and it has morphed through a number of different types of committee structures, but it has been going on for well over a decade. And there's been regular updates as a result of that. The activities that are current today are lesser in terms of financial impact, and that's why we feel it's to be brought here. And there is no tax levy implication as a result of this, because it is being funded through reserves by the city.
Yeah, Councillor Fad, just to answer your question, what are we getting for? I think healthcare is probably one of the most important things to the people in our community, and this group is really good at interfacing with young doctors, getting young doctors interested in coming to Sault Ste. Marie, doing socials with young doctors. They're really on top of the market, who's out there, what people are out there, what specialists are out there, and they meet and interface with these people on an ongoing basis to interest them in Sault Ste. Marie and attract them to Sault Ste. Marie. I think the value is tremendous. So, I mean, I think the good news and the highlight, Councillor Fada, is it's $80,000 instead of $100 now. So like we've saved $20,000, but like it's $80,000 well spent. If you think about, and it leverages significant money from community partners. You know, we have contributions from our community partners, and it helps us make sure that we have the proper level of physicians in our community, which I think everybody will agree is very important. Councillor Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I had the privilege of being on this from the beginning when I was in my former life as the marketing manager at EDC. We were very much part of the marketing package of this, and I went on several recruitment tours. And it's at least 15, maybe closer to 16 or 17 years that we've been doing this. I've been retired for 13, so I'm saying it's about maybe 17 years. And when we began, we were putting in about $300,000. It was close to $1 million program in the beginning, and it has been able to be reduced over the years at different occasions. And if I recall, too, I believe it was some of the interest from the 5% of the slot revenue is where this was funded from, and probably still is to some extent. So it's not, as you say, the levy at all, Mr. Mayor. But the critical part is it's retention and recruitment. That's what's very important to remember, is that retaining our physicians in our community is as important as the recruitment. And some of the incenting that's had to be done over the years is, for example, if we had a need for an ENT physician, that physician's equipment that was required in order for him to set up in a place like Sault Ste. Marie might have to be covered. So it's a very complex thing, yet it's been extremely successful and held up as a model around the province. So I do think we'll hear more about it, but I don't think there'd be a question about us moving forward, and kudos that we've got it down to 80,000. Thank you.
Councillor Butland?
Yes, concur with what has previously been said. Councillor Christian's question, the finances are important, obviously, because we're participating, but more importantly, it would appear that we have been successful, and every indication is that we have been. I'd like to know, and does anyone know here, and it may not be a fair question, how successful have we been? I don't get calls anymore about orphan patients, and we've got X number of people waiting to see a doctor. Are we in good shape as far as physicians go in the community?
You know, I think those questions are best left for Ms. Pagnucco, who will be very capable at answering them. It's my understanding, and don't hold me to this, but in participating, it's my understanding that we're in solid shape in a lot of areas. There's a few specialties that we really need to work on attracting, and they know what those are, and they're focused on them. Again, going back to the value question that Councillor Fada asked. So you can ask those questions of Ms. Pagnucco, and she can give you very specific answers.
Good, thank you.
Anybody else on that matter? Seeing none, Councillor Christian, do you have any other matters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to close out on that, my questions were designed as much to do with getting the information out to the public. I've seen prior presentations, and I think we can all remember that when the reports were coming to us, we always got a spreadsheet about where we were and where we've developed. So just for my part, I know that the program has been very successful, and I agree with what you say. There are a few holes, but if you consider where we were, we've made great strides. Anyway, if I might, 6.6, wastewater advisory. I have a question through you to, I guess, Mr. Elliott. Sir, it says in the report that we're looking for additional funding because there's been an increase in process issues. Is there a specific area? Is there a general comment you can make about that statement?
Councillor Christian, the advisory services we have a need for advisory services for wastewater treatment in our situation because the PUC operates our facilities, and we feel very strongly, staff recommended some time ago, that we need a specialist looking over our shoulder when there's process changes or when there's some sort of a hiccup in the system. Both these plants are biological plants.
Right.
And things come out of the blue. We had something called filamentous bacteria this year. I didn't even know what that was. But we need to call somebody right away and say, how do we get rid of this? Because they're living processes. So this fund, this $50,000 annual fund, is the agreement we have with AECOM to look after those services for us. And we've exhausted that $50,000. $50,000 is not enough. We've been overrunning it in the last few years, but your procurement bylaw requires that we come back to you for these additional amounts. So we're recommending another $20,000 in this case.
Follow up, if I might.
Go ahead.
To Mr. Elliott. You'd mentioned the problem that you hadn't heard of before. I guess my natural instinct is to ask, since we've identified it, do we have a process in place to eliminate it or at least try to prevent it from happening again, or is there anything we could do to prevent stuff like that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, the process essentially, we learn for some of these things that come along, we learn as we go. We may make process changes. They may also recommend capital improvements, small changes to the plant to make the process work better. And also, it essentially allows our PUC staff to be in contact with people all over the country, actually. There's other biological nutrient removal plants out west that they can talk to on the telephone because these guys work for AECOM, and they're very helpful, the people that run this type of plant out west.
One final question.
Sure.
To Mr. Elliott. Was that problem you identified, was that at the East End plant?
Yes.
And did that have anything to do with a few of the reports that we were getting in this late summer about odor? Would that, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm asking if that might have had anything to do with it.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, I'm not sure whether that had anything to do with the odor complaints that we've been getting, or actually the odor complaint that we've been getting from one particular individual. There are some possibilities that we're looking at. One in particular is a capital improvement that we can enhance the odor control system, and if it's a big enough project, you'll see that coming back to council to try to mitigate odors at other places in the plant.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. On the same matter, Councillor Bruni, go ahead.
Through you to Mr. Elliott. You're requesting the $20,000. So in November 2015, you received $50,000, and now this $20,000 will carry over until the end of this year?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, yes, we're estimating that we could use up to 70 in total, so we're asking for an additional 20.
And then the following year, you'll be requesting the same amount, or? would this be?
Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruni, I've been talking to Catherine Tata. We may ask for 75 to 100, depending on what's happened in the last few years and how much we think we'll need. I would also add that this money comes from your sanitary sewer revenue on from the PUC bill. It's not in the levy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the same matter? Seeing none, Councillor Christian, were you done with your matters? Councillor Turco, you had your hand up for the consent agenda. You're taken care of. Any other matters in the consent agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I have a motion by Councillors Turco and Shoemaker. Resolved that all items listed under date 2016-10-11 consent agenda be approved as recommended, save and except item 6.12.
All in favor? Carried.
Mr. Mayor, I suggest we next deal with item 6.12 and the motion of Councillor Butland following that as 8.1.
Sure.
Item 6.12, Public Transit Infrastructure Fund, Phase 1. There's a report of the Manager of Transit on the agenda and a motion by Councillors Turco and Huppinen. Resolved that the report of the Manager of Transit be received as information, and further that the allotment of $300,000 from the Transit Reserve Fund be approved to be used to match PTIF Phase 1 funds, and further that staff be authorized to prepare the application based on the projects listed in the report to meet the October 18, 2016 deadline.
Okay, we're going to, Councillor Shoemaker put his hand up, but we're going to start with Councillor Butland if
Yes, thanks to the clerk for accommodating me. I'm trying to put this together with the resolution
8.1.
8.1 because they are related, and I should tell you that I have spoken to Mr. Scott on several occasions, and it wasn't his specific suggestion, but I think he will be supportive of this, and I've been holding on to this all week. I didn't want to throw him under the bus. I think it's appropriate that I use it now. I know, it's a groaner. At any rate, yes, and I would like to acknowledge Sally Chateauneuf, who is the prime mover of trying to reconsider this Sunday bus service. She called and said this was a real problem. Some people are spending $200 and $300 a month on cab service to get to and from work, and obviously these people, most people can't afford that kind of money just to get to and from work. Now, am I creating a problem here with Mr. Scott at the mic?
Well,
Should I continue or what?
Why don't we just let you speak to your motion after, and we'll since Mr. Scott's up there, we'll take the questions for him first.
That's fine.
So I thought maybe you had some questions for him, but you've already spoken to him, so you don't have any questions. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Scott, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, I believe it was earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, that we approved some funding to look at either an upgrade or a new building for our bus repair facility.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, that was part of the 2016 budget process. We put aside $250,000 for a feasibility study. We're using $190,000 of that feasibility study. The problem with the cost for the feasibility study is that it began before this program was in place. So unfortunately, it's not on this list. And that's basically where we're at right now.
What about the outcome, though, of that feasibility study? Would that be eligible for some of this funding, potentially?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, absolutely. I've confirmed with the MTO, and they're facilitating the funding on behalf of the federal government, that the feasibility study will, in fact, trigger potential funding from the federal funding program for items like the detailed working drawings. So it will fit together, yes.
So if we approve the items that are listed in this report, does it hamper our ability to apply for the funding for the eventual either upgrade or replacement of the bus barn that currently exists?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, no, actually, that could work in our favor, because as you know, we do have our asset management plan. So potentially, whether we build a new building at Sackville or refurbish 111 Huron, we could be looking at 50-cent dollars for the roof, for example, at Huron Street. $1 million roof, instead of costing the city $1 million, we might be able to work this out so that this funding covers half that price.
I think this, sorry, the CEO, I think, wanted to add something.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. And I think Don is, or Mr. Scott has responded, but just to make it clear that this program is a cost share program. So whatever it is that we're going to be getting in terms of dollars, if it is that it's going to be for a relocation, if that's indeed what the feasibility study suggests is should be the case, there is a contribution that would be needed on behalf of the city, and that would be a levy impact in terms of that contribution. 50-cent dollars is still millions, and so there is that challenge that we'd have to face at that time. So we're being prudent right now in terms of what we do have available, which is $300,000 in the budget, trying to maximize what we're able to use that for, to be able to get something from the PTIF fund.
Thank you for that. What I'm also, if I'm understanding correctly, basically, we're not at the point yet where we can be asking for money for the replacement or the upgrade of our bus barn, though. This is sort of, we're doing this now, we're applying for this now because it's available, but is it also because we're not at the point that we can be asking for money for our bus barn?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, the feasibility study won't be completed until March of 2017. So at that time, we'll know what the recommendations are, and then we can proceed from that point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have a list going, Council. So we have Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Don Scott. For the viewers at home, I'm going to ask this question because a constituent asked me to bring it to your attention. Thank you to one of our local media. There was an article that you may recall over the weekend about the amount of money that was cited, $3,279,873. So the question from my constituent is, please explain to the viewers, this person was under the impression that we have $300 million approximately to spend.
Sorry, did you say 300 million?
Sorry, 3 million. And the constituent would like to know, why are we only receiving 300,000? So can you just help educate the viewers? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, the $3.279 million is actually what we were allotted to match. There's many communities throughout the country right now that are not going to match their full allotment, and that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's basically the state of the economics for each individual municipality. And our $300 is, we feel, an excellent opportunity for us to do more than we were doing this time last year. So it's not money that the federal government is simply handing to us. We have to match it, as the CAO had alluded to earlier, with our own funding, which would be the other 50 cents of each dollar.
Thank you. I think that's a great explanation, just to reemphasize that, yes, the money is available, but we have to match it. And so we have to look at what's in our own accounts.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Is that it, Councillor Hollingsworth? Councillor Butland?
Yes, I want to relate what Mr. Scott's saying to the resolution that I've put forward. Approving your request, will that allow you at least to reconsider the reconsidering rejigging routes to possibly accommodate the Sunday service?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Button, at this point in time, all I can really do is agree to look at what you would like us to look at. If we're successful with the federal government with our route review application in 2017, 2018, that would be an excellent opportunity to look at a variety of different wants that the city the constituents have come forth with this year. And if we are successful and we are able to review the conventional bus routes, that's going to be our priority.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Hoopanen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Scott. You're seeking approval for the $300,000 from the Transit Reserve to match the federal funds. Does that deplete our transit reserves, or is there still money left in there?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hoopinen, I would like to defer this question to Shelley Schell, as she controls those accounts.
There you go.
I don't think I control them, but I can give you the answer of what's in it. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hoopinen. The $300,000 is made up of the reserve balance that we have currently, plus the $130,000 that we annually allocate to it. So that would be the 2017 allocation. So the total of those two is all we have available, and it will deplete the whole reserve as of the end of 2017.
That's what I was afraid of. Sorry to hear. My next question is, the application deadline is October 18. Is that it? Once that date has passed, is that finished now? We can no longer have any kind of access to the 3,279 or 279?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hoopinen, that's correct. We have a one-time shot at this program, and our application is due October 18th. After that, the window for applications is closed.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Councillor Nero?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scott, one question, and don't take this as criticism of the list. I'm just trying to understand where the list came from.
Yeah.
How did you arrive at the 5 that you are asking us to approve? Are they just what fits the $600,000 spend and not priorities, or are they priorities?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, these are absolutely priorities for us. The 4 para buses, that's huge. We need them if we want to serve this community the way we'd like to and the way the public expects us to. We need these 4 para buses. And then, of course, the surveillance cameras are very, very important. It helps us manage potential liabilities. Our workforce, it ensures good customer service. It's the right thing to do. And it's always been a high priority for us. Actually, when we added the surveillance cameras to the conventional fleet, we wanted to do it at that time, but we just didn't have the money to do it.
Okay, so we can rest assured that notwithstanding the bigger project that's being looked at, the infrastructure itself, that these are important items with transit that should be done.
These are important items, and as I mentioned earlier, the feasibility study, and if we are successful with the route optimization review, we should be able to link to phase 2 funding.
Thanks, Mr. Scott. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else on this matter? Okay, so I think we'd vote on this matter separately, and then we go to Councillor Butlin's motion. Okay, so you want to read the motion for the...
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay. So all in favor of Mr. Scott's report? Carried unanimously. Okay, so we'll proceed to Councillor Butlin's motion, which is 8.1.
Under 8.1, I'll just read it, Councillor Butlin, Sunday bus service. Just as a preface to this, for Council's information, I had been asked whether this motion was a reconsideration of a previous Council decision. It is my view that this motion in and of itself is not a reconsideration. It is requesting to pass along staff information to staff for review and report to Council. When that comes to pass, that may trigger a reconsideration process, depending on what those recommendations may be. But the motion before you tonight is not a reconsideration of that decision. The motion, therefore, is a motion by Councillors Butlin and Christian. Whereas the decision to reduce Sunday bus service from 18 to 12 hours has negatively impacted those whose work schedule necessitates bus service to ensure job security and financial stability. And whereas owners, operators, supervisors of 24-hour operations at gas stations, call centers, convenience stores, coffee shops, restaurants, grocery stores have indicated impacts on scheduling and worker retention. And whereas the funding allocated by the federal government may provide an opportunity to either reconsider the decision to reduce Sunday service or rework present routes to accommodate those negatively impacted, or introduce an alternative transportation option to address the issue. Therefore, be it resolved that staff review the petitions and information collected by community members and report back to Council.
Okay, Councillor Butlin, would you like to speak to it now?
Yes, yeah, I would. Thanks.
Okay.
As I said, I've acknowledged Mrs. Chateauneuf for what she has done, and we are often lobbied to say, why don't you bring this forward? And at least I always challenge people. I say, well, give me some background, because I just know going to council say we need $240,000 to reinstate this route or this service wouldn't go anywhere. So she said, would a petition do? And I said, well, it wouldn't hurt. So she went out and took a petition of several hundreds of people. But upon reading the petition, I said, there's a lot of people on these petitions that probably have never rode a bus in their life. So the petition may be not the best vehicle. And I said, maybe we should take a look at 24-hour operations, be they restaurants, garages, any facility that's open 24 hours. Those are the folks that will be impacted. So I went to two places and was convinced that indeed it impacts people getting to work and from work, and scheduling for the owners, and safety of the workers, people walking home at midnight on a Sunday night, trying to carpool. Most of them have to give up works because there's no transportation, and so on and so forth. And so she went to 10 or 12 or 15 places, and the supervisors, the owners, the operators, the managers of Pino's, Husky, Metro, RJ's, Ajero, all the convenience stores, restaurants, hotels, Tim Hortons, North 82, A&W, Boston Pizza, Wendy's, and Wacky Wings. She went to all of these places, and what the anecdotal reports she wrote down as she spoke to them, and this is proof of that indeed it has an impact on people who simply cannot afford to get to and from work without some sort of other arrangement, and they've tried. And we could have had the gallery filled tonight, and it was told me maybe it's not appropriate. Bring the troops back at a later date, maybe a better action. So the full $240,000, I hope the monies that we've approved earlier, just a few moments ago, will allow a second look at this, maybe not a reconsideration, but having to potentially rejig the routes, if that's a word, or come up with some alternative. Can we negotiate with the cab companies to say, hey, how about a lesser fare? How many, depending on how many people are in fact needing this? How about a smaller vehicle? These are concepts that people have put forward to me. And the ultimate for me was the suggestion, we're very willing to pay a lot more for fares to get to work and to get home. So that's an indication of how serious this is. And our bus system has always been subsidized and always will be subsidized. That's what municipalities do. And it was difficult to say that, quote, we accommodate those who have physical disability or handicaps, pardon me, but these people are being caused financial handicaps. And if we don't support this in some way, we will have to support these people perhaps in another way, in social services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate the accommodation that the clerk has given me and discussions with Mr. Scott. I hope that maybe there will be a positive resolution, but I'm not 100% sure. Thank you.
Any questions on Councillor Butlin's motion? Seeing none, can we have a vote on the motion? All in favor? Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, we need to turn to planning at the moment. We have one planning item. Number 7.6.1, 267 Cathcart Street. We have a report from the senior planner on the agenda and a motion by councillors Turco and Shoemaker. Resolved that the report of the senior planner concerning application A1416ZOP be received and that official plan amendment number 217 by way of a notwithstanding clause to the residential policies within the official plan be approved. And further, that the subject property be rezoned from R.3 low-density residential zone to R3.S low-density residential zone with a special exception to 1, permit not more than 16 dwelling units to locate within the existing building, 2, permit the ground floor of the existing building to be utilized for commercial purposes, more specifically as a social innovation hub, for which the purposes of this bylaw is defined as a business incubator to support a number of small startup businesses in a collaborative environment with on-site support services. 3, that there is no outdoor storage associated with the ground floor commercial uses. And 4, that where commercial uses occupy the ground floor, that required parking be reduced from 37 spaces to 21 spaces, and that the legal department be requested to prepare the bylaws necessary to effect the same. Just a note, Council, you did have one additional piece of correspondence on the addendum concerning this.
Okay, Peter Tanazo, will you please give us a report?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. This is the former Blessed Sacrament Church on Cathcart Street. It also has frontage on Alexandra on the southern side of the property. The applicant is requesting a rezoning for a mixed-use development. So we're looking at some commercial uses on the ground floor with 7 dwelling units above. Essentially, the recommended approvals are very specific to a business incubator, which is that of small startup businesses that wish to locate in a collaborative environment. And the specifics of that approval are to recognize that this isn't a residential area and that there is a reduction in parking. It is also recognized that this is a very preliminary idea for the owners and applicants, and that in essence, Plan B, if the business incubator doesn't go forward, Plan B would be to have not more than 16 dwelling units within the entire building, so a 16-unit apartment building. I would also like to note Claudia Daniels is here to address this application should council have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. First, I guess if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak against this application? Obviously there isn't, no? Ms. Daniels, would you like to speak, please?
Well, I'm available if there's any questions.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Turco, please.
Thank you very much. My question actually is Mr. Tanazo, the senior planner. And as Acting Mayor said, you have correspondence today from Irma Giovanatti, who lives in the area, very close to the area. And first of all, I want to offer my condolences to Miss Giovanatti on the passing of her husband. Recently, in the last couple of days, why she couldn't be here tonight. But the correspondence that you have there, she shares some concerns, particularly the parking, Peter, our senior planner. So I know we had a church there before, and that was sort of temporary parking for people who went to church on Sundays or some other events throughout the week. It's a little different in this kind of development that's proposed. And by the way, do we have a name of the developer or just a number here? Peter?
Claudia did.
Ms.
Daniels.
Daniels?
Yes. Hi. I'm one of the owners of the property.
Ah. I thought you were a legal advisor on behalf of, no.
No.
Okay, so you can probably answer some of the questions. But Peter, so you don't see any difficulty with, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor? And no. If this goes through it, 100%?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, I think mixed uses, commercial and residential, the parking tends to complement each other. So generally, the commercial uses are busy during the daytime hours, and then the residential uses, they have their peak parking demands after hours. So while at the outset it seems like quite a large reduction, really when you look at that mixed use nature of it, it's not really that bad. And then when you also look at our zoning bylaw doesn't really contemplate a business incubator, and it doesn't have a special parking formula or parking ratio for that. So the ratio that's being applied here for the purposes of the bylaw is 4.5 spaces per 100 square meters, which is the same that you'd have for retail, office, whereas business incubators, just by their very nature, tend to be very small scales, generally few employees, generally few people coming to and from the site. So I think at the end of the day, it's not as significant of a reduction as it appears to be.
Through you, Mr., but most of the, you're not going to put all the parking spaces on the property, obviously, correct?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, we're of the opinion that all of the parking will be able to fit on the property
for this
without
development.
spilling over onto the side streets.
For this development?
Yes.
None will park on Alexandra Street in Cathcart? Is that what you're saying?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, based on our experience and the parking demand that's associated with business incubators, and keep in mind that the recommendation or the recommended approvals are for just that of a business incubator, not other commercial uses, we feel that all the parking can be accommodated on the site.
Thank you. I'm happy for the development. Anything is better than a vacant property, I always say. So, but I'm concerned about the parking myself, so that's just for the record. Thank you.
Councilor Nero?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Mr. Tenazzo, for those of watching that may not know what business incubators are, could you briefly speak to them and maybe explain briefly what goes on with a business incubator?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, I'll allow Ms. Daniels to elaborate on this, but my understanding of a business incubator is essentially they're a space for small business owners to locate in a collaborative environment where they can work with each other. They're all sort of aiming for the same goal, which is to expand their business. Oftentimes, business incubators will provide support services such as certain clerical work, photocopying, things that a small business person might not necessarily be able to afford at the beginning. So that's my sense of a business incubator.
And a follow-up, Mr. Tenazzo, if and hopefully that business expands and grows, would it remain there or would it look for a bigger space elsewhere in the commercial zone?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, I think the general intent is that as a startup, you start at these spaces, and then as you expand, if you look at the site plan as well, they're quite small areas that they have. Once they expand, the intent is that they move on to another space.
Thank you, Mr. Tenazzo. And just to confirm, you did say that this zoning is specific to the Social Innovation Hub. Failing that, if it could go to completely residential, up to 16 units, and my question specifically is, if the property sells after this rezoning, the only commercial use remains the Social Innovation Hub, correct?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, that is correct. The zoning stays with the property regardless of ownership.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tenaz.
Councilor Butland?
Yes. Quite supportive, as Councillor Turco's indicated. It's better than an empty structure. But Social Innovation Hub, and that's innovative, I'd like to say, but it seems quite, we already have 2 incubators. Is this one different? Is it because of the social aspect of it? But at this point in time, it seems speculative. Do you have any prospective tenants?
May I respond to that now?
Yeah.
At this stage, we have a number of organizations that we're working with that are interested in the property. All of them are of a social nature. So we would be looking at services such as housing, such as a gathering place for youth and seniors, potential business opportunities where they could use the kitchen. It's a certified commercial kitchen in the property, so the kitchen is available to start catering businesses or to, we'd have a garden there. They could can foods, sell them. This is something that's a little bit different from our typical business startup innovation center hub. It's more addressing some of the needs that are out in the community that aren't being addressed at this stage. There's gaps in there's shortages of housing. That's something that one of the organizations is interested in for the property. There's the social hub, which is providing services, like I said, that aren't available. It would be things like teaching, young people how to manage money or how to save when you really don't have a lot of money. So there's a lot of social aspects to it to better and engage people. The other component is, as some of you have already mentioned, is the property has been vacant for some time. Nobody wants that in a neighborhood. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. I don't know if anyone's been inside, but it has a lot of potential, and it has, I think, a lot of potential to become a hub and a gathering place for the neighborhood. And that's something that we, as the owners of the property, are very interested in. So at this stage, all I can say is that there's a number of organizations interested. These are some of the areas that they are interested in. I'm pretty excited for the potential that the property has, and I hope we get your approval to proceed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Myers?
Comments, Mr. Acamere?
Yes, please.
Okay, through you, Mr. Acamere, to certainly Claudia. I just want to say that I strongly support this. I think it's a very, very exciting, and really appreciate that you certainly, I've known you for quite some time. You were a community leader and well recognized as someone who does excellent work and has a real burden in our community for wanting to see things go forward like this. So I thank you and your partners. I have a suspicion I might know who some of them are. I don't, but maybe. And I know the kind of community leadership that brings this sort of opportunity forward the way you've done. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Councillor Fada.
I just want to, if I could just ask Peter Tenazzo regarding, this is something that I'm just kind of curious about. This is the third church, I believe, in the area that's seen this type of development. And I like to look at it as being affordable housing, and I think that's the way it's been referred to by a few of the developers. Can you give us something about, some information regarding the old Lady Mount Carmel Church, whether it went ahead with its original plans? Like, it got the green light to do something similar where it was put in, but I went there sometime after the development was supposed to have started, but he was basically, are you familiar with it at all as far as any building permits?
Councillor Turco, how is that relevant to this application?
I just want to know, I guess I'm sort of concerned about the timelines.
Fada, sorry. Well, yeah, but how's it relevant? Because we should really, this is we're in the planning session now, so this isn't a general kind of council, topic. We really have to be relevant to the matter that's before us.
Well then, I guess my question will be directed to Ms. Daniels, and I guess the timeline that you're looking at, once, if and when this gets the green light, which I'm sure it will, what is your timeline for development?
To Mayor,
to Councillor Fada through me.
Right on. At this stage, we're still, as I mentioned, working with a number of organizations. So, I mean, from our perspective as owners, as soon as possible. But that will really depend on the negotiations and which organization is ultimately successful.
So, I'm just touching mostly on the residential part of it. Is that are the two gonna have to work hand in hand? You're gonna wait till you have one or two tenants for the commercial part of it, but as far as the residential part, are the two working together or can they work separately?
They can work separately, yep.
Okay.
They can.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Have we asked, when I was out of the room, Mr. Clerk, for any opposition to the motion?
Yes.
We have asked? Okay. Any other questions in general, council? Seeing none, we can have a vote on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is that it for the planning agenda, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Mayor and members of council, that's it for the planning agenda. We do have one other regular item, and that is rodent abatement under 7.3.1. Council, as you're aware on the agenda, there's a report and a motion that covers the staff recommendation. I will read that first. There's a motion by Councillors Turco and Huppinen. Resolved that the report of the Deputy CAO of Public Works and Engineering Services concerning the rodent abatement program be received, and that Council directs staff to discontinue the rodent abatement program as a whole. and further that staff coordinate the services of the city's building division, Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Centre, and Algoma Public Health to explore the implementation of a program as proposed by the Innovation Centre in assessing and tracking hotspots. In addition, on the agenda, Council, you will see that there is an amendment. This was originally proposed at last meeting. It's an amendment motion by Councillors Nero and Bruni. Resolve that the main motion be amended as follows: to delete the words "to discontinue the rodent abatement program as a whole," and to replace it with the following: to continue to provide rodent abatement services to private residential properties, to approve the RFP of Able Pest Control for the period of October 1, 2016 to September 30th, 2017 with option to renew, with funding to provide the service for the balance of 2016, $9,116 to come from the Unforeseen Contingency Fund, and funding for 2017, $36,601 to come from the General Levy, which means a $7,601 increase over 2016 if the contract is renewed in October 2017. Council, as you're aware, we'll deal with the amending motion first.
Okay, so we're voting on the amending motion. Just to be clear, Council, we've discussed rat abatement, and a lot of us have expressed our opinion on rat abatement. So I'd like to keep that to a minimum today, if I'm not going to prevent anybody from saying what they have to say, but I'd like you to be mindful of the fact that you've spent hours on this already. So we'll open up the floor if anybody has any questions of staff. Yeah, if you had, sure. There's a Councilor.
Which resolution are we?
You're voting on the amended the resolution as amended.
So I don't see that here on my resolution.
So if you look at
731.
If you look at number 2, that's what we're voting on first. And if that amendment passes, right? So you see there's
So
two.
moved by Councilor Nero and
That's
Councilor
right,
Bruni.
Nero and Bruni.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you very
That's
much.
what you're voting
I do have a question for Deputy CAO.
Okay, we'll start with you then.
Sorry. In your report, Larry, Mr. Girardi, you don't recommend this. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco, again, our recommendation hasn't changed. Our recommendation is to discontinue the program.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go with Councillor Hupinen and then Councillor Hollingsworth.
Mr. Mayor, I just, thank you. I'm down as a courtesy seconder on that motion, and I'm not in agreement for it. So should I be telling you now that I don't? Okay. I just, because I'm,
we'll have the
I am against
a
it.
note through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hupinen. Right now, we're dealing with the amending motion, and that may change your opinion depending on the outcome.
Okay,
vote
that's
on that
all
motion.
right. That's fine then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to, I believe it's our city councillor. I'm not sure who, but I just want to have clarification on the education component. The last time this was brought up, we were talking about the importance of education. I'm not sure which way this is going to go, but can you, here's my question, how are we going to educate the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie on what they can do to reduce, if not prevent, rodents?
We're going to go to Mr. Girardi.
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth, the city webpage, of course, has a lot of information about dealing with rodent issues. As a matter of fact, we have that up and running now. We wanted to make sure we had that in place no matter which way this direction went. It also links to the Algoma Health and Health Canada. Added to that, on the webpage, we have the pest control companies, all of them that are local, so they'll be able to contact any one of them at any time. Calls received will be mapped by the Innovation Center, and this will identify the hot spots, which will assist the building department under Community Services Enterprise to provide information to the public in a way of mailouts, or perhaps a visit from the bylaw officer if required. As for media communication, I will leave that up to the Communication Division and DCAO of Community Services and Enterprise to also put items in the media if they need be. Say a hotspot is identified, there's potential for something like that to be put in the media. Because I know you had some concerns about moving and how much media there will be with this item, but those are opportunities. But that'll be something that'll be looked once we get the program up and running and once we know the decision of council.
Okay. Councillor Hupinen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question through you to Mr. Girardi. The $3,038.75 a month, this may have come up already, but I don't know if I heard it in the past. That's a flat fee regardless of how many rat calls we get. Is that correct?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hupinen, that is the 1 month cost to run the program.
Okay, and that would be whether it's 10 calls or 50 calls?
Exactly. It's whatever it takes to run the program for that month.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this was ever discussed, but could we not come up with something that could be on an on-demand situation? So, for example, if I have 3 calls this month and another ward has 5 calls, could we not set it up somehow? I know that the particular companies that are offering this service may not like that, but could it be something that we could maybe enforce through one of our bylaw officers? Or I'm just not sure. I just don't think we're getting our money's worth. I had one call this week from a lady who said that she had a rat trap that was placed there last year, and it's still there. So as far as we know, the rat is still inside that. So I just don't know how much service we're getting with these calls.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Hupinen, the RFP that was put out had specifics in it with regards to reporting. So we'll have that opportunity to know if there's a situation where as you say, as one of the traps wasn't taken care of, we'll be getting reports either from the persons, but the company themselves will have to provide reports of where they put traps every month. So we'll be able to track that. And that mechanism has already been put into this RFP. We didn't have that in the past.
Okay, thank you. I'm still not comfortable with the amount per month. I still think that we're being overcharged, and I think we could come up with a better way of solving the problem. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Council? These are questions, Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing that occurred to me, I just was checking with Councillor Bruni, I don't recall. How many years through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Jory, do you know, and you may not know, but how many years have we been doing rodent abatement for the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie, the private residences?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Council, I believe it was 10 to 15 years. It's been quite a while since they were in the program, and it might have been more than that. I'm aware of at least the last 10 years, but it might be longer.
And I guess where I'm going with this is I've been here 9 years, so it's been the 9 years. But what was happening prior to that time? I guess I'm trying to understand. This has become something that we have spent an inordinate amount of time discussing, and I'm sure that everyone is getting a little bit concerned about the amount of time we've given to an item like this that in the end is a $7,000 impact on our levy and budget going forward, a new $7,000. But what were we doing prior to this? Because obviously there's been rats affecting our private residences for decades.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Myers, what triggered this, from what I could gather from past history, is there was a situation somewhere in the East End that was somewhat aggressive, and a committee or a team got together and decided that we needed a program. And at that time, that's when the program began, and it's been continuing since then. Again, there's several communities throughout Ontario that have, well, almost all don't have a program. But I always look at it as there will always be a program, it's who's paying.
Yeah, I hear you. Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a brief comment, and then that'll wrap me up, or are there other?
Well, do we have any more questions? Councillor Romano, did you have a question?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Through you too, Mr. Girardi. Throughout the 3, I think now, sessions that we've discussed this matter, I just want to be clear that we are all aware, and people at home are aware of what the program, as it was and as it would be if it was passed, would entail. So we use the word traps a lot of the time, but those are actually bait stations, correct?
Correct.
And so literally all that happens, you spot a rat, whether inside your home or outside of your home, typically you would have called APH, and APH would have connected you to Orkin formally, and now it could be ABLE potentially. they send somebody to your house, they put some poison outside, that's the end of it, right?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Romano, correct, not inside the house. You had mentioned inside, this is strictly for exterior.
Thank you for that correction. So the only thing that our money buys then is one of these companies coming after however much time has passed. We know we've heard of reports of, several weeks in the last while anyways, that people are waiting for attendance. But the pest control company simply comes and puts some poison outside of your home, wherever it is that the rats were spotted. And that's the end of what's done.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Romano, in this RFP, they have to not only put the bait station there, but check the bait station and report on it.
Okay, check afterwards, come back and say there's
Correct.
action, et cetera. Something's bit, something hasn't. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
I have one question. APH is no longer willing to take these calls, so I presume that the city's going to take these calls? And if so, do we know, have we figured that out, and do we have a sense of what that cost is that we'll be accepting?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, you're correct. Algoma Health has said that they don't have the manpower to manage the calls coming in. In the building department, there's someone who will be receiving those calls. So it's being absorbed, of course, inside the building department as one of the current staff.
Do we have any more questions, Council? Councillor Fada?
Comment?
Okay, so then now that we're on comments, there's no more questions left. We'll wrap up comments. Please keep them brief, and then we'll vote on the amendment. Councillor Fada?
Yeah, I just briefly here. I was talking to a commercial property owner recently in Ward 5, and we were talking about this problem. And he said that he seems to solve his problems very simply. He's got 2 cats that travel around his property, and he says that he's had no problems with rats or rodents. I think the responsibility has to fall on the individual properties. I think we already do that when it comes to nuisance issues. When people have dirty yards, people have caused problems as far as aesthetics for the neighbors. We do have inspectors, so that problem is taken care of by the property owner. And if that property owner doesn't take care of it, then of course it ends up being taken care of by a third party. I think this has to fall into a similar category. I don't think that this is something that we can sustain. I'm looking at this as a short-term plan. I don't think we can sustain this long-term. We know the costs are going to continue to go up, and what I'm afraid of is that certain individuals who will vote for this are the same individuals who thought that we can continue with daycare, we can continue with the way we were offering fire services. Where's the money going to come from? I think we have to be careful here. This may not seem like a lot of money, but like everything else, I mean, we made a big deal about that ship on the water, and God knows that we talked about that enough. But I think for those that are going to vote for this, I think they should be very careful, because it's not going to be something where we're going to deal with it in the short term and say, well, we'll just worry about it after the next election. I think it is prudent upon us to be very careful if we do vote for this. I think this falls into the category of individual ownership of your property. And as this same individual told me, he says there's 2 things that these rodents look for. They look for water and they look for food. And if they don't have those 2, they will not stick around. And I think it's important here to look at this carefully. And for those of you that will vote for this, I'll be looking forward to seeing how you're going to keep our taxes down when we come down to budget time. Thank you very much.
There's apparently a third thing they look for. They look for places with no cats. Yeah. So comments, Councillor Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think that we better bring this to an end for sure. I am going to be voting for it. And the reason I'm going to be voting for it is because I'm a firm believer in the fact that when we're going to withdraw a service that we have been providing for in excess of maybe 15 years, that we need to work towards that end. Would I be supporting this a year from now if during this year we take all the opportunity to do the education, to do the informing, to monitor very specifically what's been going on? Because the program, we've had a lot of varying information about this since this started. Our costs were told to us at one point of pressing near $100,000. Now we're getting this right down to an RFP to meet the private residences for another year at $36,000. So with an increase on our budget of $7,000 to add to the 29 currently budgeted. So for myself personally, it's an issue that I look at Ward 2, I look at my constituents, I realize we have an aging population, we have a lot of wonderful seniors who are trying to remain in their homes, and this is not something that is easy to deal with if you, are living by yourself, and particularly are a senior. So I very much would like to work towards seeing us withdraw this, because I think that when we look at all of the pressing needs we have, and there are going to be a lot more before we're through our budget this year, I understand that. I don't want to hear every time about the next $7,000 if this council decides to support this tonight, because I think we also have to look at the services we're providing and have been providing. When we choose to stop providing a service, we need to prepare our constituents for that. So that's how I'm looking at this. I don't believe in a cold turkey quit. I believe that we need to work towards it, and the education piece that my friends on the other side of the table have raised is really critically important to this, but I think we have to get there, and I don't want to just leave everybody high and dry now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Nero, then Councillor Romano, and then maybe we'll be able to vote. Oh, Councillor Bruni too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly.
Do you mean that?
Yeah, I do. I do. If anything, I believe that the discussions we've had with this issue has brought awareness to the public on home remedies, if I can put it that way, on how you can detract rodents from coming to your property. And also, I agree with Councillor Myers that I see this as a kind of a test to enhanced education and how that works out, and a transitioning away, if we can put it that way, from a program that might be going away in a year or two. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nero. I appreciate the brevity. Councillor Romano, if you can follow Councillor Nero's suit, that would be very appreciated. You've already made a number
your expectations low.
You've already made a number of very, very lengthy statements about this issue. I'll just remind you that before you start again.
Yes, I have been certainly active in these discussions, and I felt the need to be active for a couple of reasons, and the main reason being having experienced the situation myself. I made this comment the first debate we had, and that's why I asked our commissioner these very questions today, again, to highlight that when you experience a problem, all that this abatement program does is have somebody come to your house after multiple weeks of your phone call and put some traps outside. And they're not traps to catch the rats, they just poison them. And that has to continually happen. From a homeowner's perspective, and I can appreciate my friend's concerns throughout here that everyone's been raising. There's concerns for elderly, there's concerns for those who can't afford it, there's concerns across the board. But at the end of the day, all that this abatement program does is it has somebody come out and put the poison out that you would otherwise do if you had mice or ants or whatever the situation may be. Okay. Now, I agree that rats are a much bigger problem than potentially mice or insects, but it will come as no surprise to any of you that I do not support the resolution, and I do not do so for two reasons primarily. Number one, we said this at the last meeting, we are going to be, if we pass this, the only single jurisdiction throughout all of Ontario that does this. That's not the kind of statistic I think we want to stand for. We don't want to be the one. Number two, we do have tight financial times. We are talking all the time about our reserves, about depleting our reserves, about concerns that we have looking at budget for the upcoming year, whether it's $7,000, whether it's $700,000. Some point in time we have to draw the line and reduce our spending and look at only doing those things right now that are essential. And I would call this a non-essential service. Our essential services are our water, our roads. These are essential services that as a municipality we need to provide. This is not, in my humble opinion, an essential service that we should be supporting. And it's for that reason that I don't support the resolution.
The amendment.
The amendment.
You don't support the amendment.
Thank you.
Councilor Bruni, you may have
Very
the honor.
short, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Compared to Mr. Romano. I will support the rodent abatement program, and for several reasons. I believe the aggressive education plan that PWT has will be important. This way the residents will be alerted that possibility next year the program will be eliminated. Also, we have no numbers. Nobody has taken care of or recorded any calls for 15 years if we do have a major problem in the city here. So I think that's very important. And once PWT comes back to us with the numbers, I think councillors will have a very easy time to make a decision if we should be continuing with the rodent abatement program. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so we all understand. Yeah, that was asked for the last time we were here, so the clerk had that ready. So we're voting on the amendment. Do we all understand that? Yeah, so the clerk will reread the amendment.
The amending motion is a motion by Councillors Nero and Bruni. Resolved that the main motion be amended as follows. Delete the words "to discontinue the rodent abatement program as a whole" and replace those words with the following. To continue to provide rodent abatement services to private residential properties. To approve the RFP of Able Pest Control for the period October 1st, 2016 to September 30th, 2017 with an option to renew. With funding to provide the service for the balance of 2016, $9,116 to come from the Unforeseen Contingency Fund, and funding for 2017, $36,601, to come from the general levy, which would be a $7,601 increase over 2016 if the contract is renewed in October 2017. A recorded vote has been requested. Councillor Nero. Oh, sorry, Councillor Turco.
Thank you. Everybody wants to change my name tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry about that. I started that.
Don't call me Provenzano, though.
Don't call him Provenzano.
For.
Councillor Fata.
Against.
Councillor Christian.
Against.
Councillor Krompotich.
For.
Councillor Huppinen.
For.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Against.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Against.
Councillor Romano.
Against.
Councillor Nero.
For.
Councillor Bruni.
For.
Councillor Myers.
For.
Councillor Butland.
For.
Mayor Provenzano.
Against.
Motion carries 7-6.
Councillor Huppinen was the turn. Everybody was watching her. Let us move on, please.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, you'll now vote on the main motion as amended.
Okay, so this is the main motion as amended. So, I mean, it's going to be the same vote, but do we have to have the same vote, Malcolm? Doesn't that carry?
You just have to vote on the main motion as amended. It doesn't necessarily need to be a recorded vote unless you wish it.
No, so all in favor? Opposed? It's carried, 7-6.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, will now move to finish off the motions under Section 8. We've dealt with 8.1. 8.2, closed captioning, is a motion by Councillors Butland and Turco. Be it resolved that appropriate staff liaise with the Canadian Hearing Society, Shaw Cable, Sault Ste. Marie Accessibility Committee, and the cities of Hamilton and Ottawa in order to provide for Council's information the process required to introduce closed captioning to City Council meetings for the hearing impaired of our community.
Okay, so Councillor Butland, did you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, and I shall be brief. several seniors, 5 to be exact, have approached me and said, I have to put the volume up so high on our television to hear you people, and it really irritates those who are viewing with us. It's a real problem. And the reality is, and I don't like to buy into this, but the vast majority of our viewers are probably 50 and older, and 3 out of 10 people in this community and all communities across North America suffer some hearing loss. So it's a reality. I would hope that young people would want to watch us and read about us, the closed captioning, but I don't believe that to be true. Is it a service? And I thought afterwards, I said, is this going to be a costly exercise? But once you've let the cat out of the bag, I suppose, it's very hard to bring this one back, because how do you say no? It's a service that we should provide. Canadian Hearing Society, of course, says yes. Our accessibility committee will deal with it this week, and I'm sure they will say yes. Shaw Cable wrote a letter, emailed me a letter yesterday indicating, yes, we have the technical capabilities, and it is complementary to what you have at City Hall. And there is a cost, but they're prepared to go to bat for us to negotiate a deal with the caption providers. And so I think it's a good move, and for the most part, people are saying, yes, this is something that we should provide to the greater community. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, no problem. Do we have any questions about that, Councillor Myers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm quite sure, knowing my fellow councillor here, this has been addressed, but is there funding available to us from the province to further our accessibility, readiness, and so on? Is that an option through you, maybe, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk or the CAO or Councillor Butler? Could there be some funding assistance?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Myers, I'm not completely conversant with the present funding programs, but it's certainly something we would look at in responding to this resolution.
Thank you.
Okay, so you have a question, Councillor Fata? Go ahead.
I don't know if somebody can answer this question, but doesn't TV have a feature where you can insert the wording of the conversations?
I certainly am not in a position to answer that question. Do any of the staff, senior staff, have an answer to that question? But the staff is reporting back to us, so if that's in effect an option, they would report that back to us. So, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, Councillor Fata. Yeah. So.
And the cost?
Staffers are going to have to report back to us on that too.
So they won't have we don't have a sort of definitive, okay.
No, I don't have any idea what that cost would be. All in favor? Carried.
Under Agenda Item 8.3, Board and Committee Appointments Process, a motion by Councillors Myers and Christian. Whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie City Council makes appointments to more than 40 boards and committees, and whereas the majority of the appointments are volunteer positions, and whereas boards and committees are very important to our community and its development, and whereas it is very important that appointments are skill-based and that we ensure volunteers appointed to boards and committees have the right skills and abilities as needed by the respective boards and committees, and whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie City Council wants to ensure that it is making the best appointments possible and using the best process available to it to make those appointments, now therefore be it resolved that the City Clerk's Office be requested to report on or before the first meeting in November, providing its best advice on how City Council should hereafter make its board and committee appointments.
So, Council, as you're aware, I had this put on as a notice of motion last meeting, and I thank Councillors Myers and Christians for putting their name on and putting it forward. This came from a few places. As you're aware, after the first time we went through, or I went through as the mayor, the way we used to do appointments, I wasn't comfortable with that process, and there was a few other councillors that agreed with me, and we looked at changing the process, and we did that, and I think the intentions were positive. But the new process that we go through has some challenges too. I've had individuals in the community have indicate to me directly that they don't like the process and they don't like the notion that they might be discussed in open council. And I've also, through the recent consultation that we've done, we had one session with New to the Sioux and some different cultural groups around the community that came in. And one of the comments they made is that a lot of the cultural groups, they need to see themselves on the boards and committees. They need to see more diversity on the boards and committees. And that really settled in at home. They talked about seeing more diversity on council, which the response to that was I encourage they run, because that's how we have to get more diversity in an elected process. But this is an appointed process, so we can exercise some control over that. And we also have the new dimension of really having to appoint skills-based boards. But that requires interfacing with the boards. It requires understanding what those agencies need and what those agencies are looking for and what kind of talents and skills they're looking for. And then it requires orchestrating that so that you get the right talents and skills. So I think I see this as an evolution. I don't think we're there yet. I think when we come around to our next round of appointments, which is going to be very substantial, I think it will be a challenge to do it the way we're currently doing it. There isn't a lot of discussion. There's a lot of voting, right? But there isn't a lot of discussion because I think we're all self-conscious about the fact that people are self-conscious about the fact that they're being discussed. So I don't really see it as a process where we're being really thorough and making sure that the right people are being appointed to the boards and the committees in accord with skills, in accord with abilities, and in accord with, frankly, I think we should start considering diversity to a larger degree than we do. So I didn't want to strike another council committee because we've struck a lot of council committees on a lot of different topics. We have a very experienced and capable clerk who has been with the city his whole career and is well designated and has a lot of connections around the province with the other clerks. And I thought it was best for him to bring back kind of, some advice based on his interface with the different clerks around the province and how they do this. And, we don't have to reinvent a wheel. I think we can look at what we're doing and maybe how we can do it better. And he figures he can get a report back to City Council before the end of the year so that when we go into next year's appointments, maybe we can go in with a process that, we're all agreeable to. So that's where the spirit of this was. That's where it came from. And I appreciate, again, Councillor Myers and Christian forward. Councillor Myers, and then we'll go to Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to add to that I had raised with you, and I think the clerk too, that I'd really like an opportunity for council to have input, because we are the ones in the end who do these appointments, and therefore and I think the way I phrased it is we're the ones who will wear the outcome. So for myself, having been here through 3 or 4 different versions of the way boards and committees have been populated, I very much would like an opportunity to provide input. I certainly have had lots of feedback. I've sat on probably 40 different boards and committees in total over my 9 years. So I've had a good look at a lot of them, and I sat on some before I was elected as a councillor. So there's some issues that are hard to wrestle with, and I think that they're ones that we need to try and work through. I certainly agree that diversity is one of them, and yet on the other hand, we've got to remind the public right now, tonight's a good chance, this is a voluntary application. So the folks that come forward to volunteer, we can't screen and set it up like some sort of an allotment. We have to ask our community to take this volunteer opportunity and come forward. But one of the pieces that will be critically important, I think, Mr. Mayor, is somewhat related, and that is another review that we're going under right now with our whole council configuration, because city councillors sit on these boards and committees, as I've just alluded to, and some of them are ones that directly tie back to our business here at council. I think of PRAC as a really good example, our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. We need the input from citizens related to that, Parks and Recreation, for example. So there's a lot of things to consider, I think, when we're doing our boards and committee appointments, even with ourselves, let alone the volunteer citizens that apply. So is there a mechanism by which we can provide input as members of council before the report comes back?
Yeah, so We had discussed this briefly. I meant to make a reference to in my comments, but the clerk is willing to meet personally with whatever counselor would like to meet with him to offer feedback. If you prefer to send written feedback to the clerk by email, what you like, what you don't like about the processes and what you think can be improved, he'll obviously accept that too. I'm not going to participate in the development of the report because I don't have that expertise, and he is. So the clerk will be available to all of you to have your feedback and take it into consideration when the clerk makes his recommendations.
Thank you. So by way of that, right now, tonight, again, I want to ask the citizens, of whom there are hundreds who have sat on our boards and committees over the years, that if any comments about the process and how it occurs, to please get a hold of your ward councillors and give them that feedback so that we can pass it on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Butland.
Yes, I've had this discussion with Mr. White earlier today, but I do want to say it publicly. The session where we put people's names up on the board and they're exposed to everybody, and those who don't get a single vote, some people said, I'll never do that again. So it's for openness and transparency, yes, but you know, I'm not so sure if that's a good way of handling it. It's like applying for a job and you advertise all the people that didn't get approved for the application. One person gets the job and the other 5 or 50 don't get a job. We don't go around telling everybody that. So maybe openness and transparency sometimes goes too far. And as far as the skill-based appointments, I don't want to discourage those. We say, well, you know, you have to have expertise in the area of the board that you are applying to. I would hope not. I think a mixture would be good, somebody who has experience in that area, but also one of the best educators and best things that people bring to a table is experience. I don't want to discourage all those people out there saying, geez, I don't meet the skill set required for this committee, so I won't apply. I hope this will not be a discouragement for those people who may be interested in just volunteering and getting involved in the community. Thanks, Mr. Miller.
Maybe as a point of clarification on the skills-based part, Councillor Butland, what a lot of boards, it's not to discourage people from, you don't need healthcare skills to get on APH's board, but say, for instance, and I was at, we'll take a good example, Children's Rehab Algoma, which is a great board, a great organization. I think they're called Strive now. And they use a skills-based model to make sure that they have a human resource skill on the board and a legal skill on the board and an accounting skill on the board. It makes for better governance and accountability. It's not that you have to have any experience in their subject, which I didn't, but I sat on the board for 6 years. It's about having the broad experience in the board to make sure the board could give proper oversight. And a lot of boards are moving to that. So it's important to know what the boards are actually looking for. And when the clerk and I had a meeting with Algoma Public Health says, we need somebody, one of you number of municipalities and townships to appoint somebody with legal skills. We need one of you to appoint somebody with accounting skills. So they gave us that feedback. And then the city of Sault Ste. Marie said, well, we have more applicants than the rest of the communities do, so we'll take whatever's left over and we'll be able to find someone with those skills. And it's a matter of, I think it's just generally considered now a matter of proper governance to make sure you have those skills on the board. So it's not, certainly is not meant to have anybody, discourage anybody from applying. Any other, Councillor Shoemaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, a report will come back with a recommendation, at which point that process will be fully vetted and debated.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be no, whatever the clerk comes back with, we're going to have to debate and decide upon.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
Under Agenda Item 8.4, Continuous Improvement Fund, a motion by Councillors Romano and Hollingsworth. Whereas it is important that the corporation strive for and seek out efficiencies to reduce the cost of operations, the levy, And whereas we as council want to foster an environment of continuous improvement whereby we encourage staff at all levels of the corporation to advance ideas and proposals that have the opportunity of saving money to the corporation, and whereas a continuous improvement fund should be created as a fund that utilizes financing options as investment capital to fund continuous improvement projects that will provide a greater return on investment than the cost of borrowing. Now therefore be it resolved that this council directs staff to prepare a report to council outlining the financing options available to serve as capital for the Continuous Improvement Fund, and further that staff provide a framework for an application process to the fund, and further that staff provide specific consideration as to the corporation's ability to direct any savings realized from the fund to offset or otherwise reduce the business commercial property tax levy.
Okay, Councilor Romano, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try to be brief. There's a number of sort of suggestions, if you will, within the resolution, so I just want to be clear. I don't think there's going to be too many people, I hope there will not be too many people who have a problem with a continuous improvement fund being set up. I can't imagine our council having a concern with respect to a continuous improvement fund. I think it's a matter of how we go about doing it. I had spoken to our CAO earlier in the year about, as well as to our CFO, about developing said fund. My goal initially, and you know, I don't propose to know every aspect of the Municipal Act, but I thought, hey, money's out there right now is relatively cheap. Can we borrow some money, put it in an account and say, here's a fund, and we would like staff at all levels of the corporation to be able to access those funds to advance ideas that would somehow save us money, and commonly referred to as continuous improvement. I saw that there were some potential impediments to how you could go about borrowing the money as a municipality, so thought that the best way to deal with this would be to get a report back from staff that would highlight these three areas that Councillor Hollingsworth and I are seeking clarification on. Part one is, how do you fund this so-called fund? The goal in mind that I think I've been very clear with at least our CAO on and our CFO is I'd like to see borrowed money used to somehow leverage us having more money in the future, meaning if we could invest into a project and we invest in that project through financed money and the return on investment is higher than the cost of borrowing, then it would make a lot of sense for us to do that project in order to save some money. And I'll use as the best example I could think of is the LED streetlight conversion, where we knew we could point to the cost of carrying out the project, we could point to the cost of the investment, the cost of borrowing, and we could look at it and say, this is how much money we're going to be able to realize in a year as a result of this improvement. And it's going to actually save us money. Which brings me into part two of my request. After we determine how said fund could be funded, I'd like to know what the application process for it should be, and look to staff to give us some kind of an idea, meaning how much better percentage points wise does your return on investment have to be than the cost of borrowing in order to qualify for the fund. One of the big aspects of this that I think is critical and important is we've had some discussions in the past about employee incentive programs, that kind of thing. I would really like to see staff at all levels of the corporation, and that goes from the person that we have at the door manning their security at night to the person to our CAO or any other department head. I think that there's an opportunity out there where maybe somebody pushing a broom can say to us, hey, listen, if we use a special type of mop head, we can save X number of dollars a year. These are the types of things that a lot of the time it's that person who's working hands-on may have insight and ideas that could save us money. And right now we are in a situation, which brings me to the third point of the resolution, where we want to find ways to be more competitive. We want our business tax rates to be more competitive. Last week, we spoke about development charges. We shut down development charges, and I think that the community at large appraised us for, or praised us, I should say, for that. I look at this as another opportunity for us to try to make ourselves more competitive. And I appreciate last meeting, we had discussions about development charges, and I referred to, our corporate tax rates being too high. And Mr. Mayor, you corrected me. And in fairness, my comments were somewhat misleading in that I referred to a 7.25% corporate tax rate. Well, it's not. It is. It is the large industrial tax rate that's actually 7.45%. We need to figure out a way to reduce that gap. We need to figure out a way to bring down those tax rates, the business tax rates. I think, quite frankly, we need to find a way to eliminate the various business tax levels we have to make us more competitive. So at the end of the day, what I would really like to see is if we were to get this fund done, and if projects come forward and generate the savings, we hope they would, from all of our levels of staff, that we could then use that money to apply it directly to our tax rates, our business tax rates, to reduce those. Because given everything that I've seen in the last couple of years here, we've talked about how we need to reduce those rates, but there's no idea of where the money is going to come from to do that. And I think this is, I don't want to see something where we're dealing with this in a similar fashion to the surplus reserve we referred to today. I think it'd be really nice to be able to say to our community, things aren't so grim, and we will do good in the future. We will do well in the future, but we are looking at every option right now and creating options to try to reduce that gap and to try to make ourselves more competitive. Those are my comments.
Do we have any additional comments, questions on this motion? Councillor Shoemaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm not sure who it should be directed to, but I believe we passed the employee innovation or employee incentive program at some point, did we not?
We did. We have passed it. I think this is a very similar motion, but the clerk can speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, with our corporate realignment, I've taken carriage of that, and I noted to the mayor that I'll be bringing a report within the next meeting or two responding to that resolution.
Okay. So, like, within 2 or 4 weeks, we're talking? We're going to have it?
Yes.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, I don't see much point in passing this right now if we're going to have something before us in a couple weeks that are somewhat similar. I'm wondering if we can move them off to come back together, or see what comes back and then discuss this.
In my opinion, they're almost entirely similar, except for the fact that this motion calls for the creation of a separate pool of money, whereas the other motion, we didn't prescribe that staff create a pool of money. All of the different departments have capital budgets that they use to, like, sort out what's going on, and presumably those capital budget would be used in the most efficient means possible to create the innovation or the incentive. So, you can pass this motion, but there will be a report back on this matter, or the motion that I think Councillor Shoemaker and Myers had passed. I had written it. I put it on as a notice of motion. So to me, this motion is somewhat redundant, but it's here, and there was a mover and a seconder. So I'll leave it to council's will what you want to do with it. Councillor Myers?
Mr. Mayor, my issue is only that I don't want to duplicate staff time doing reports. So I would be willing to put up a deferral motion to defer this until we have seen the other report, that we know whether or not it satisfies this resolution that Councillors Romano and Hollingsworth have, and whether they are satisfied with it, with the report that comes forward, or whether out of that report there's something even different again that this council chooses to do. So I would like to defer this resolution that's before us until we've seen the report, because quite frankly I think that we asked for that, it was midsummer of 15. So it's coming. I assume it's coming, as Councillor Shoemaker just asked, next or the first meeting in November. So we ought to look at it in light of this. I just don't want to duplicate staff work and have another report asked for. I have a feeling this report was leaning more towards the CFO, and she's looking at me there, whereas this one's coming from the clerk. And, you know, I think the clerk has heard part of what's been said tonight, of course, too, and as he's preparing the report, he maybe can encompass something. So I just don't want duplication of our staff work, that's all.
Is there a seconder for that move to defer? Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Romano, did you want to speak to that? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
I entirely disagree with the notion that this is identical or very similar even to the employee incentive program. The whole purpose of this is to create a fund, to locate the funds to have this project move forward, to create the application process for staff to go to the fund. And the whole purpose at the end of the day is to create some kind of a pot of money that we can down the road apply to our tax rates or whatever, you know, council and staff see fit to do with that income. But the point of the matter is we can talk about employee incentive programs, which I've heard 2 or 3 times over the course of the last 2 years. And here we are 2 years into the term and nothing, we haven't seen anything on that. And I'm not coming down on staff or anything for that. Quite frankly, there hasn't been a lot put forward that I've seen through the council in terms of what it is that program is going to be. What I'm asking for is a report from staff on where we get this money from, number one, how much we can access, how much it's going to cost us, and let's set up an application process for people to come in and bring applications to the fund that want to generate projects. The money needs to be there. If you don't have the money there, how is anybody ever going to suggest any of these continuous improvement ideas, whether it be the motion I brought forward at the last council meeting for LED internal lights conversion? Where's this money going to come from? So we need to know that.
There's a motion to defer. I would take Councillor Romano as in speaking against the deferral. Okay, yeah, so he's speaking against it.
Clearly I was speaking against.
And then someone can speak in favor of the deferral, and then we vote on the deferral. If the deferral fails, we vote on the main motion. There you go. So Councillor Myers has spoken in favor of the deferral. So we'll have a vote on the deferral. So all in favor of the deferral? Against the deferral? Okay, so not everybody voted, so you weren't getting. So the deferral fails. So now we're back to the main motion. Do we have any more comments on the main motion? Councillor Butland?
Yes. I'm of mixed emotions. I had the opportunity to speak to Councillor Romano about this, and I indicated that you had suggested an employee suggestion program, and that has not moved, and it bothers me a little bit to hear some conflict between the two individuals, and I agree, we don't want to...
There's no conflict between Councillor Romano and I.
Well, not personal, but the content is, yes, there is a conflict in the content. And in my discussions with Councillor Romano, I said, you know, this is very ambitious. I don't know if we need the fund to begin with. And we have to start with the employees, and that should have been the starting point a year ago. Let's sit down with our people and say, we're thinking of doing this, and I hope you'll participate. And start thinking about some ideas. And here's what other cities have been doing for a whole long time. Most unsuccessful, but some successful ones. So use those as models. But for heaven's sakes, get to the people. Nobody knows better than those who are on the ground, as indicated, security, pushing the broom, the cleaner, the person who's taking the calls. They know better. Hey, this is my work environment, and I have an idea how I can make it better for all of us. So the ideas come forward, but I don't know if we need this hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement. And if you do, need the funding, well, come forward. But I would ask Councillor Romano and the mayor and come together and let's talk about this. I agree, we shouldn't be, I don't want to be put against Councillor Romano, say voting that down when I know that this is on the table.
Maybe we can walk through something procedural.
They're similar enough that you should be talking together.
Yeah, Councillor Butland, I think you might be describing a problem that simply doesn't exist. If you look at the Employee Innovation Program, we've been calling it incentive, but it's Employee Innovation Program. It was passed a year ago, and I think a couple months ago I was fairly difficult on the staff in open council that we don't have anything back yet. So when this came forward, Agenda Review did have discussions with Councillor Romano and said, this looks fairly similar, why don't you wait until, we see what staff says about the original resolution, because I still don't know what staff is going to say about the original resolution, and I would agree with you, we should have this by now. But Councillor Romano wanted this on the agenda, so it went on the agenda. It might very well be that staff, well, I don't want to prejudge what staff is going to say, I don't know what they're going to say. But I think what Councillor Romano's idea is, and I think he agrees with mine and I agree with his, we have to get the employees to tell us what the best ways to save, be efficient are. And I think if you read that old motion that we passed a year ago that he supported, and I agree with his sentiments, I completely agree with his sentiments. It's just a procedural matter. So there's no matter of him and I not speaking to each other, being on the same page. It's just a matter of process. Only if you're going to agree with me.
Let me be clear, there is no conflict here, or certainly from my perspective, a perceived conflict. I was approached by staff with the resolution during agenda review last week. I just wanted to clarify, I did not receive any information about the Innovation program.
I haven't either.
My understanding was there was only questions surrounding the third aspect of my request, and I thought we had that discussion. As far as, us coming together, no, I don't have any conflict. The concern I have that I think it is important for this thing to move forward is not that we're talking about the employment innovation aspect of this is the consistency. The difference is I would like to set up an actual fund so that it's not just in a matter of course in the average day of work that we say we've got X number of dollars in this particular department, and if someone last week, for instance, had come forward with the LED lighting thing, well, where does it come from? Then we're looking for the money, right? Then it's going to come to us on a case-by-case basis to evaluate, do we want to do this or not? This would streamline that process, so it comes into an application. It comes in as an application to the fund, and the application process will say, for instance, you have to be 10 percentage points or whatever the case may be better in terms of your return on investment than the cost of borrowing. So you don't have to get approval from staff to go ahead. From council to necessarily go ahead with the project. If you meet the specifications within the application, we move forward. And that could be something that's discussed in the application aspect, which is under the second part of my request. But I don't see them as the same. I definitely don't see them as the same. And no, there's no conflict, just to be clear. Thank you.
Councillor Kompotic.
Just a question. So we don't know yet how many employee suggestions had came in to council for continuous improvement? So it hasn't even been started. So we're putting a fund together what we think will generate some more ideas on continuous improvement because they're going to get paid? I got it mixed up then. We're asking for a report, but we're going to approve a fund?
Well, I think that's a fair question. I don't think that, and Councillor Romano can correct me, I don't think by voting for this you approve a fund tonight. Because it might be that staff isn't of the opinion that we can do this. And I don't know that. I haven't canvassed that. But as long as that's clear, Councillor Romano, you're asking staff to report back to us on the feasibility of this. Is that correct? Or are you just presuming we can create a fund?
I'm waiting for my red light. No, this was something specifically that I canvassed with our CFO and CAO a year ago, and there was some difficulty in how money could end up in this fund. So I've asked for a report so that we can get that information. Then with that information, we will be armed to make the decision. All I'm asking for is information right now. I'm not asking to create anything. I'm asking for information. Is there a way that we can access some kind of funding out there that will carry a low, the thought I had, and I know this doesn't work this way, but a credit line. We can all go to the bank, if we get approved, we borrow some money, put it in a credit line. You don't pay a dime on that money. So my initial, unless you use it, right? Unless you put it to use. So my initial question or concern last year at budget time was, can we do something similar as a municipality? And there was sort of, generally speaking, a no, but I wasn't sure. And so I thought, let's get a report. Let's see what's out there. Let's see what we can use to fund this. And let's see if there's something that we can all come into grips with, an application process for it. I mean, guys, this isn't, businesses throughout the world have specific funds set up for continuous improvement projects. That's what this is about. That is about us trying to find better ways to do business so that we could stretch our dollars further than we currently have them. We are in a process right now where we're depleting reserves because we're waiting for a check from somewhere that we don't know is ever going to come. Let's stop worrying about money and find a way to create it.
And we're going to create it by borrowing it. I love it, Councilor.
That's
okay, so listen, Councilor Krampotic, so the spirit of his motion is to get a report back from staff, an information report on the feasibility of what he suggested in his motion. So I think that's fairly clear. And I think with that, could we have a vote on this motion? Please. All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you, Councilor Mano.
Under agenda item 8.5, we have a notice of motion, which will be read at this time but not considered until the next meeting. It's a motion by Councillors Butland and Hollingsworth. Be it resolved that Council introduce the practice of allocating 5 to 10 minutes of each Council meeting to provide updates to Council and, more importantly, the community at large on initiatives that are pending, ongoing, prospective, and new as being considered by staff, EDC, Innovation Center, and private enterprise. Possible presentations would include status of Sault Ste. Marie Lottery and Gaming Initiative, Lottery and Gaming Pursuit Team, Data Center, Small Business Development, enrollment and future plans of Sault College and Algoma University, progress of casino privatization, permanent structure, the tech, call centers, present situation, future plans, staffing issues, Airport Development Corporation, SIS Manufacturing Corporation, Searchmont, Tenaris, present situation and future, energy storage, environmental waste international, tourism, community energy strategy, community adjustment committee, city staff, housing construction activity, potential economic initiatives through city and First Nation chiefs, any others deemed pertinent and appropriate by staff, EDC, SSMIC, and council. Under Section 11, bylaws, I have a motion by Councillors Turco and Shoemaker. Resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date 2016-10-11 be approved.
All in favor? Sorry, Councillor Krampotic has a...
It was an oversight on my part. I may be in conflict with two of the bylaws, 11.1.7 and 11.1.8.
Okay, so the last motion will exempt 11.1.7, 11.1.8?
Yes.
So all in favor? Don't put your hand up, Councillor Krampotic. That carried anyway. So now we'll vote on 11.1.7, 11.1.8.
I have a motion by Councillors Turco and Shoemaker. Resolved that bylaw 2016-166 being a bylaw to amend the Sault Ste. Marie zoning bylaw 2005-150 concerning lands located at 475 Airport Road be passed in open council on the 11th day of October 2016.
All in favor? Carried.
Motion by Councillors Turco and Shoemaker. Resolved that bylaw 2016-167 being a bylaw to designate the lands located at 475 Airport Road as an area of site plan control be passed in open council on the 11th day of October 2016.
All in favor? Carried.
I have a motion by Councillors Turco and Hoopanen. Resolved that this council proceed into closed session to discuss the disposition of properties in the downtown and Bruce Hill areas and one legal matter concerning potential renegotiation of a contract. And further be it resolved that should said closed session be adjourned, that council may reconvene in closed session to continue to discuss the same matters without the need for a further authorizing resolution.
All in favor? Carried.
And a motion by councillors Nero and Shoemaker resolved that this council now adjourn.
All in favor?